So we are over at Performance Research, and this is actually kind of a nifty little video here. The vehicle you guys have seen, which is the GMC truck, is actually Joe Cobin's father's truck. Joe Cobin being our engine builder over here at Performance Research. So they reached out to us to do a little bit of basic work on it while it's been sitting in storage, and minds came together based on what we saw when we brought it back to the shop, and it ended up needing a little bit of an engine refresh. So we brought it over to Joe, and he has worked his magic on it. But it's a really neat little process to be able to see, like, you know, the son building the dad's truck, which is pretty cool. So give me a little background on the truck and engine that was in this thing and that kind of thing.
So Dad's had this truck since he was younger than I am, and he found it out in Oklahoma, and it was sunk in the mud about a foot with bullet holes in it. And he did a quickie resto on it, and he's had it, you know, forever. And then in the mid '80s, he did a legitimate restoration on it, and in the middle of that restoration, he bought a General Motors GM Performance LS6 454 crate motor for it, and that's what this is. And he's had that motor in that truck ever since, and that truck's been around my entire life. So it's kind of special to me, and it's special to him, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so when we got to the point where it was leaking oil and it just seemed tired and things weren't working like they used to, and you guys got it apart, it just seemed like, hey, if we're going to pull the oil pan off, it's going to be on an engine stand, and we're going to take the front cover off, and we're going to change intake manifolds. Might as well rip the heads off, and might as well do this, might as well do that, and it turned into a complete engine overhaul. And so what we did is we just took the same motor and put, you know, today's technology, better parts in it that will work for what the truck's going to be used for. And the truck's going to be used for more of a truck than a muscle car. And he's got a custom trailer he had made to haul Harleys around, and we wanted to move the stall down so we could use the overdrive for freeway driving. And so we needed to step back on the camshaft and get something with a little bit tighter duration so we could get the torque in sooner. And that's exactly what we did, and we got a custom ground camshaft from LucoreRacing cams, and as you can see, tightening up the duration and giving it a little bit more lift definitely worked, because we're making 2,600 foot-pounds of torque, or at 2,600 RPM, we're making 450 foot-pounds of torque.
Right.
So you guys are going to be putting a 2,300 RPM stall back in this thing. So it ought to work pretty well.
I guess the neat thing is you still you're using the original pistons that were in this thing. We didn't go crazy balls to the wall like you guys normally do, where we're doing all kinds of craziness. It's still got original 1980s pistons from GM. It's got pistons. It's got rods from GM. It's got a crank from GM.
Mm-hmm.
There's no trickery. There's a little bit of head work, and you've replaced, I think, valves and springs and retainers and all the consumables in the head.
All the expensive parts.
Yeah, but you didn't do any kind of, you know,
no, it's still a legitimate
porting or polishing or any of that stuff as far as that goes.
I did a little bit of bowl blending, but you know, it is what it is.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's still a legitimate iron-headed General Motors 454, standard bore, standard stroke. We did a little bit tricky of a ring package to you know, loosen it up a little bit, free up a little bit of horsepower, hopefully. Seemed like it did. Seemed like it worked. But yeah, we don't typically just go in there with a drill and a ball hone and, you know, touch up the cylinder walls and throw the same pistons back in the hole. That's not usually how we do things.
Right.
But we just wanted to do it that way to keep it GM. And it's not like it's bad parts. It's good GM parts. It's a GM steel crank and a GM steel rods and GM forged pistons. And you know.
And it's not like this thing ran terribly when we took it apart.
No.
We don't have any film of it, but I remember when we have it over at the shop and we were getting ready to tear it apart, you came over and you were ripping it up and down Industrial Parkway, and it sounded great. It ran really well.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't terrible. It had some oil leaks. It hasn't been driven a lot. The guys, you know, this truck has been together since mid-1980s, 85, 86, I think. and he's enjoyed the truck for, near 30 years. Hey, that's a hell of a long life for a hot rod. So take it apart, clean it, put it back together again, do a little trickery, and make some pretty good numbers. So.
And we love the truck. The truck's not going anywhere. It kind of deserves it,
Oh, absolutely. It's a super unique truck. Given it's a GMC and not a Chevy, which is typically what you're going to see. Most of those things.
And it's a 57, which kind of makes it a little bit more rare.
Right.
You don't see a whole lot of 57 GMC pickups.
Well, a lot of those were farmers' trucks. They lived in the farm, they died on the farm, they just rotted on the farm. So they weren't something that back in the 70s and 80s anybody cared about maintaining. They didn't keep
Well, truck, yeah.
like your dad said, found it buried a foot deep in the mud. So.
Yeah. And the thing is, when my dad was interested in buying it, he didn't even know it was a GMC because the GMC grill on the hood was missing, and it's the same looking hood as the Chevy version without, all the trim pieces on the front and the emblems and everything. It looks just like a Chevy, the 57 Chevy.
So you bought it?
Once you get all the bling on it and you get the emblems and everything, then it becomes a GMC.
That's crazy.
But when he opened the door and he saw the the plate, the factory plate in there that said GMC 100 and all the other info that's on it, and then obviously the title, and it said it was a GMC.
Right.
So that's interesting.
Bought a considerably more unique truck than he thought he was going to get.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're going to show you the dyno run. Since you've made it through this process, we're going to show you what happens, and hope you like it. We'll continue on with the build process.
And by the way, it's not going back in the truck looking that way. It's coming off the dyno here, and it's going to a buddy of ours, and he's going to paint it. And it's going to look killer when he's done, hopefully. It's going to be gloss black. Should pop pretty well with all the aluminum on that thing, so. And plus the truck's black, so.
Oh, it'll look sexy.
It should look pretty good.
Well, hopefully you like it. We'll continue on from here.
You're not going to blow it up.
I know, it's a lot of mechanical movements that I gotta memorize. I just kind of like shotgun approach, tuned it with it in the truck. I had the timing all screwed up. We had the wrong intake manifold on it. You know what I mean? And I literally just bolted it on.
Oh, because this is the one that you guys had taken like a Holly and put it on there, and you put a Edelbrock on there, and it.
We had an Edelbrock on there with a Y-end intake, and we scrapped the Y-end intake, and then we put this ridiculous Street Dominator intake on it, which was totally not appropriate. And then we put that carburetor on it with a spacer underneath it, which is even worse. And I had the timing all screwed up. my 36-degree mark on the dampener was more like a 41-degree mark. So
That's aggressive.
it really didn't run all that great. I remember driving it too, you know. It felt like it would just, you know, when the RPMs would come up, it would just kind of fall on its face. I mean, you drove it.
Mm-hmm. I didn't really have a beat on it, but
Well, I think it'll drive a lot better now.
I'm sure.
I'm sure that's more than it was making before by a good amount.
Well, your dad was saying that as it sat in its current state, it ran like a 12.6 flat.
Yeah, something like that. He's only run it like a couple times.
Which for a old heavy truck of all metal, it's. I mean, this was I think when I was talking to your dad, he said it was like this is an LS6 from like the early 70s.
Yeah, the one that would have came in a 70 Chevelle, I think, is like 11.1 compression or something. And this is 10 1/4, I think.
So you replace the pistons to bump the compression down.
Well, this is technically I think a 1984-85 GM Performance crate motor.
Okay.
They sold these in the mid-80s as a LS6 454 crate motor, and that's what that is. So when GM was selling them as crate motors, they bumped the compression down so you could run pump gas.
Sure.
In the mid-80s, you couldn't get 103 octane fuel.
Right. Unless you're at the drag strip.
And then you had an LS7, which was the same motor, but I think 11.3 to 1 or something, which obviously you couldn't run pump gas in. But it was, that's what it was, and it was a flat tappet, solid cam, and it had not enough lift and too much duration.
There's nothing not to like about that. That's go fast on the street right there.
And this is RPM down here, so at least.
I can't see.
Well, this is 2,500 and this is 6, so.
It doesn't fall off appreciably until you get up to 5,700, 5,800.
But I mean, everything it's doing back here is
Yeah.
perfect.
Oh, you couldn't ask for it to be better now.
450 foot-pounds of torque at 2,500 RPMs.
Yeah.
That'll work. It's got a 2,200 RPM
Yeah,
stall.
that'll work. Yeah, his dad's gonna like it. That's a little more his speed than this fucking thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that thing's a little.
That's just outrageous.
I think Joe secretly built this car for himself.
I know he did.
His dad may not know that
Tell
yet.
me about it. He's got more seat time in it than the old man has. I can
Oh,
tell
I'm
you.
sure.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure. I gotta test it again. I gotta go take it up and
Oh,
drive.
No, that's.
Yeah. Dad, I built us a car.
Built me a car for you.
Yeah, you're signing on this line right here.
Right.
Well, yeah,
You can't drive it.
you may wind up having to do that. I don't know if it's easier to do it on the engine stand here, or if you're going to put it on the engine stand when you take it off of the cart. It can stay on that cart because we've got the
Ford cart.
The Ford cart's got an engine on it, and that's the next one on here.
Mhm.
And then the Spice motor has got its cart already done, so we don't need that cart. You can leave it right there until you bundle it up to take it home.
So you put a Pontiac on. Did you find my pistons yet?
I'm gonna
Have
find
you
it.
called, yelled at anybody yet?
Not yet, but I will.
Warm up those vocal cords, Bob.